Let's try it. See how long the video is. It's 22 minutes. I can speed it up. Yeah. I just have to explain. Okay, so if everyone is ready, anybody here not done meditation before? Okay, good. Okay, but you've done other kinds of meditation? Yeah, okay. So settle yourself into comfortable position. Can we get more volume on the microphone? Louder? Louder. It's not really...
Do you want to lift it up?
No, turn up the volume. This one is not, is already turned up. Normally it's better than this. Can you try?
Let's see.
So try to set the mind. This is the time for meditation. Take a note of where your mind is right now. Try to feel the mood, the quality, the feeling. Just asking the question, how is the mind right now? Should start to show yourself to yourself rather than being in reactivity, moving through the world, responding to the world. You turn attention inwards so you know what is your thought, what is your feeling. I would recommend you use the sensation of breathing as it runs through the center of the body. Bring your attention in from the level of the eyes and down into the body. The feeling of the breath runs straight down the center of the body, from the crown right down to the seat. This is the physical sensation of the breath. It's not where the bronchial tubes split and the lungs are positioned. That's the physiology. The physical sensation actually runs through the center of the body. Try to be with each breath as it arises and ceases. When a thought comes up, memory, a feeling, a desire, just make a note of that distraction that's come up and then return attention to the breath through the body. keeping this process going, wherever the mind, wherever attention wanders, you know immediately you've gone to a sound, a thought, a feeling, sensation. Most of the life of human beings, the mind simply reacts, wanders around, it's not aware of itself. So we practice carefully, deliberately, knowing where the mind has gone, knowing where attention has gone. And using the breath as an anchor. When you find you become distracted, lost in a thought or a story or a feeling, the moment where you recognize that, this is mindfulness. Re-establish attention. Be willing to give up and abandon whatever thought or topic had come into the mind. 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times. Keep resetting, re-establishing awareness in the present moment. Interrupting whatever thoughts, feelings, perceptions come into the mind. Settle your mind as bright and as peaceful, as clear as you can, and turn that attention to the thought and perception of loving kindness, a well-wishing for all world beings. Try to generate this beautiful, universal, unconditional loving kindness any way that you can. You may think of people or even animals whom you have loved or respected. You may use the words, may all beings be happy, may all beings be peaceful, may all beings be free from suffering. You may use visualization, any method that you can. Be inventive. Find a way to generate this beautiful, universal loving kindness radiating from the center of your being. Sharing this with those people you love, those people who are suffering, the people in this room, animals, heavenly realms, hell realms, radiating brightness, clarity, beautiful intention. May all beings be happy, peaceful, free from suffering. Sabbe buddha balapatta pachekanancha yam balang arahanta nancha tejena rakang bandami sabhaso sabba buddha nubhavena sattha soti bhavantu te sabbe buddha balapatta pachekanancha yam balang arahanta nancha tejena rakang bandami sabhaso Sabba dhamma nubhavena sattha soti bhavantu te Sabbe buddha balapatta pachekanancha yang balang arahanta nancha te jena rakang bandami sabhaso Sabba sangha nubhavena sattha soti bhavantu te. So relax your posture. Okay. So did anybody watch the video? Joe? It was on the announcement for not a single person did their homework. That's terrible. I didn't state it as homework. Okay, so what I should have said was make sure you watch this or else. Then, okay. Well, see how you feel at the end of this evening's session, but this was a talk by a student in America, a university student, and did what is now a very famous talk of him saying that how you are the center of your world. And he makes a very good and amusing case for this. So, So that was the topic of this evening. So in short, what he said was, he started off with some funny anecdotes, but it was funny because he's saying how students always have to start off with funny anecdotes. So that was quite good. And his little anecdote or little story he started off with was the two fish who are swimming along in the sea, and a big fish passes by coming the other direction. And the big fish says to him, "Hey, how are you doing? How's the water?" And as the two fish are swimming off, the one says to the other one, "What's water?" So this is the idea that there is something very fundamental to your experience that you are missing, that is so obvious and clear to you that you overlook it. And this was the gist then of what he goes on to talk about. He talks about how we create the world with our own thoughts. So in Buddhist terms, this is called Maya or delusion. It's not actually Buddhist, this is Indian philosophy, so you find it in various Indian schools. And Maya, the delusionary world, is that fabricated world that we make up, or the conceptual world in which we live. Now there's a question of whether this conceptual world is real or not real. There was a book years ago, some of us older people know it, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. Anybody read that? Okay, a few people read that. You should read the follow-up book, Leela. Did you ever see that one? Robert Pirsig, he wrote the follow-up book like 25 years later. And where the first book kind of just explodes in madness, you know, he loses his mind in the book. And in the follow-up book, 25 years later, he brings it back down to earth. And it's really quite good. And if you've read the first one, I would definitely recommend you read the second one. So Robert Pirsig was studying Indian philosophy in India, and there was a teacher there saying, the entire world is delusion, it's not real, it's just illusionary. And he'd been studying this Indian philosophy for quite a while. And the thought occurred to him, so Hiroshima was delusion, that's just illusionary, not real? He thought that's not right. Now I guess this was in the 1960s, so it was a lot closer to that event. So he quit the entire school of Indian philosophy, went off on his own on this motorcycle journey, and with his son, as I remember, right? If anyone remembers that. It's about 30 years since I read the book, but and then he kind of descends into madness. As I remember, his quest was, what is quality? Anyway, that sent him a bit mad. So that idea of the atom bomb, was that illusion? Was that delusion? He's using an example of something very real to show that this world around us is not delusionary. So in what way is Maya actually a delusion? Maya, or the delusionary world, is created through stories and concepts. So because the world is too complicated for us to understand, we make stories to try and summarize or navigate the world around us. There was a famous science writer, Carl Sagan, who was a massive influence on me when I was young. Until I found out he was wrong about pretty much everything. And I've read about 6 of his books, but I'm very angry that I got sucked into Carl Sagan when I was young. He's a scientist, science writer. Anyway, he said in one of his books, it was called Broca's Brain, and Broca was a neurologist who'd been studying the brain. And there's an area here where you process understanding speech. There's Broca's and there's Wernicke's. If you know about these things, you probably know that I'm making mistakes, but I'm not far off. So one of them is where you understand language, and the other is where you create language. And these are 2 distinct areas of the mind. And in fact, we had a yogi some years ago, and when he'd speak like someone deranged, someone who kind of mentally handicapped, if I can say that. And he'd had a stroke in this area where you form speech. But the other area, he could actually understand speech fully, and he could think perfectly. Just when he tries to put his thoughts into words, it came out garbled. So in Broca's Brain, Carl Sagan asked the question, how much can a human being know? How much knowledge can we fit in? And so he worked out roughly how many neurons you might have, how many links between the neurons and dendrites, and apparently there's more than there are stars in the universe. And then he compared it to a grain of salt. And the sodium atoms in the grains of salt are arranged in a kind of pattern. And working it out one way or another, he came to the conclusion that a human brain is not able to know a grain of salt. The only thing we can know is the pattern or the composition. We can know a story or a summary or a model of a grain of salt, but we can't know every atom in the grain of salt and where it is and spatially and how it works, how it bonds and valences and all the rest of it. So this makes the point that the world is far, far, far too complicated for us to fully comprehend. In fact, even one person is too complicated to comprehend, as my married friends tell me. So we make these stories to guide us, to navigate us through the world. These stories are concepts, and these concepts we use to construct the world around us. And these concepts are enough in order to help us navigate. So that's what Maya is. That's what the delusionary world is. It's not that the world isn't real. It's that the only interface, the only way we can interact with the world is by having short stories or heuristics or concepts that build the world up around us. And that these concepts are actually very limited. And if you change the concepts, you change the world around you. So this was the basic premise that the guy in the talk that you're all going to listen to afterwards was talking about how we create the world around us. He wasn't using Indian philosophy, that's what I'm adding in, because I was going to give you the Buddhist angle on what he said. But since you don't know what he said, I have to try and navigate a middle path. So this Maya, this set of constructs, is the world around us that we use to navigate. And we overlook one really supreme and important factor in this world, that you are the absolute center of that world. And this is the water that David Wallace says that we are swimming in, that we overlook. We overlook the fact that you are the center of everything in your world. And that you then are layering on layers of filters and understandings. When we look at things, we think that we are seeing the thing itself. We think that we are understanding the world, our place in it, your place in it. He points out that your experience of you is absolutely, fundamentally, 100% so vivid, so clear, so immediately accessible to you in a way that nobody else is. That you yourself are absolutely, completely different to every other person in your experience. And we overlook this because you think of yourself as being another person in the room or in the world. So this sense of self then, you are never really seeing the world, you are seeing your own constructs, your own concepts of the world. I was thinking of Boris Johnson a few years ago, the British Prime Minister, and I really liked Boris Johnson. When he came to power, he was actually I still maintain he was pretty good, getting Brexit done, forcing Jeremy Corbyn into calling a general election and a few other things. So I quite liked Boris Johnson, but one of our friends, Mary, she hated him. And she was absolutely aghast at me that I could like Boris Johnson. Now, what is it? You think that you are observing the world. I think that Boris Johnson is out there and that he's like this, and he's pretty good. But Mary is looking at the same Boris Johnson, has access to the same information, but thinks he's an absolute, what word can I use? Twerp. Turned out Mary was right and I was wrong, but you know. How is it we're both looking at the same thing and coming to a completely different conclusion? Because actually, every moment of perception that you have, you are in it. And you are filtering and interpreting that thing. So you're never actually accessing the world. You are always colouring that experience. And this is what David Wallace says is the water that you swim in. The fact that you are always the centre of your world. This does become important with meditation and enlightenment further down the line. If some of you know Advaita, some of these enlightened teachers, I saw one myself who's in Australia, and he says, I can never see anything that isn't myself. And I remember being impressed. This sounded very Zen. I probably repeated it to a few people. I never see anything that isn't myself. Of course, I had no understanding, but I must have thought I sounded cool. And it didn't make much sense to me at the time, but now that I've practiced, I know exactly what he means. That every moment of consciousness is your consciousness. You cannot be aware of anything other than what you are shining your consciousness on. Therefore, your consciousness is yourself and is present in every single thing in the entire universe. Your pure, enlightened Buddha nature is right there with every single perception. So he's quite right. Everything that you see, everything that you hear, really is yourself, just as much as it is something outside. So David Wallace takes this idea and he says, well, when you realize that you yourself are so central into this experience, it starts to change your perception of things. Because you're no longer seeing things out there in the world, you are seeing your interaction with things. And this difference in the way of perceiving things should start to afford insights. This is what we are doing with Vipassana meditation, insight meditation. We're not simply being aware of what we are doing and what the people and things in the world are. We are turning the attention onto yourself, knowing and interacting with things and with people. My one example I have is the chanting in the monastery. When I first went to the monastery, and I met the head monk there, Ajahn Karuniko, and he said, okay, in a couple of hours you come down to the hall here and we do the chanting. And I was a bit aghast because I'd read a couple of books about Zen Buddhism, and I thought this is about like the center of a wheel has no center, but it has a center. I remember reading this in a book, being extremely impressed with it. And then I get to the monastery and Ajahn Karuniko says, we got to do chanting. I'm like, I didn't come here for chanting. I remember that Zen book I read, and it was saying, mountains are mountains, streams are streams. Mountains are not mountains, streams are not streams. Mountains really are mountains, streams really are streams. It's like, yes, I love this stuff. And then when I get there, it's Yo So Bhagawa Arahang. It wasn't what I'd paid my fees for. So, because I wanted to join in, so I started to do the chanting, and for a few days it was horrible because I can't follow the Pali, and then after a while you get into the rhythm of it. It starts to become quite therapeutic. But then after a while after that, of the same chant every day for a week, 2 weeks, 2 months, it's like, oh my God, not this again. You start to hate it. And then I started to, because I was turning the attention back on myself. Remember, chanting is maya, is illusion, it's the delusion, it's the conceptual world. What's really real is my interaction with it. And what I started to note was, most of the time I just do the chanting, I'm not liking it or disliking it. I'm actually thinking about something completely different. And then my attention comes back to the chanting. Oh, I hate this chanting. And then I see that thought come up. I'm like, do I really hate this chanting? 15 seconds ago, I was thinking about taking a holiday in Bermuda. Or something like that. So, am I really disliking it? When seconds beforehand, I wasn't even thinking about it? When that thought comes up, oh, I hate the chanting, is it really real? Or is it just an idea that's popped up that I'm believing? So this is where, if you start to write yourself into every experience, it starts to fundamentally change the way you experience the world and the way that you experience yourself. Should start to change if you're practicing correctly. I do this when I'm talking to people, and I can be rather short-tempered, easily exasperated, especially when people are coming out with ideas that are patently nonsense. And then while I'm talking to them, I start to disagree with their idea. And I feel this upsurge, this, Or do you ever get that thing when someone tells you how to do something that you were already doing? Or starts to tell you a joke that you already know the joke? You're like, no, I know that one. You have to interrupt them. What is that feeling? Why not just let them tell the joke again? Why not let them say the thing that you disagree with? I was talking about Grok a few weeks ago, and the AI, and somebody said you shouldn't use Grok because this is Elon Musk and he's a Nazi. I'm like, oh dear God, why? Now, conceptual universe, I have to decide if Elon Musk really is a Nazi and whether that actually should even affect the program that I'm just using. And also, I say Grok, but I use Chat and I use Gemini, and mainly because I use them too much, I keep running up against the limits. So I have to keep switching. And I use Claude for the computer code and stuff. So I just use Grok. I say Grok because it's easier than Chat. I can never remember Chat GPT or GTP or you just like, so just Grok. But I mean any of them. They're all similar. So he starts to wag his finger at me. You shouldn't use Grok because, like, if I'm not understanding that I'm the center of the world, what I'm doing, what I now have to do is decide if Elon Musk really is a Nazi, if that really should affect whether I use his program or not, what this person's particular bias is, because he's a kind of liberal, wanted to push his political side, which has nothing to do with me. I'm not American, and I don't care, other than, like the rest of the world, we look at American politics like, what? What? Huh? This guy and this guy. Joe Biden and Donald Trump. I mean, come on. So, if I know I'm center of the world, what I'm doing when he's starting to talk to this to me, say these things to me, I feel this upwelling, usually in the stomach, like a gut reaction. Like I want to stop him from saying these words that I don't agree with or I don't want to hear. Maybe I agree with them, but I don't want to hear it. And I feel that upwelling, and I don't react to it. I can observe it and know it. See, this is me. I'm really the center of this experience, not this guy and not the thing that he's talking about. So putting yourself in the center of the world, realizing that that is the water that you're swimming in. That is the central feature with every moment of perception you can possibly have. Can you perceive or think about anything without this light of yourself being involved in the story? Cognitive scientists say you can, but so what Wallace was saying in the video, because you all watched the video, right? No, not a single person here watched the video, so don't feel bad. There was a video in the announcement that you're supposed to watch. Yes. So what Wallace goes on to say is like, okay, now I figured out that I'm the center of the universe and I'm centrally the pivotal actor in every moment of my experience and every part of my understanding of the world. He said, now you have to start to take responsibility for your own part in the story. So he gives the example of, well, you're just getting home from, he's in the university, so he spent all day in the university, he's been in classes, he comes out and he's on his way home and he realizes he's got no food, so he goes to the supermarket and the lights are too bright and the wheel doesn't work on the supermarket trolley, and he gets they run out of the thing he wanted to buy, and then he gets to the queue and there aren't enough checkouts operating and the queue's too long, and he put the stuff in the paper bag but the paper bag isn't strong enough, and then he gets into his car and gets irate at all the giant SUVs with people driving around who don't care about the environment. And then he realizes that, wait, I'm the center of all that experience. I'm creating all that experience myself. He does put this in quite an amusing way. So he says, well then, if you know that, you have to take responsibility and start to be careful about how you write experience in as you are having it. He says, well, maybe the person on the checkout in the supermarket, maybe they're not having a good day either. Maybe they wish that there were more people working in checkout. So my interaction with them is being short-tempered, but maybe I can change that. Maybe this SUV that's getting in my way, that it's not someone who hates the environment, maybe they're getting home to their own family, or maybe they have an emergency. Maybe my lack of compassion, the closing down of my heart, is the real problem here. and that you can rewrite your story, you can rewrite your part in the world. So this is what he's suggesting that university students should be doing. He says, we are here in university to learn how to think. And learning how to think means we must first accept our role in the world that we are creating for ourselves. Then you're not going to be a victim in the world that you create, because you are now much more in control. So the Buddha had something like this also. This is what I would call taking control of Maya. Yes, Maya is delusion or the illusionary world, but it doesn't mean it isn't real. There's a difference. Like illusion means that it's not real. Delusion means it's misunderstood. So the Buddha said in Maya, in this world that we create, that we carry around with us, he said there are some secret powers that you should develop. Namely, to see the beautiful in the ugly, to see the ugly in the beautiful, to see the neutral in the beautiful, and see the neutral in the ugly. What that means is, in the something that you find where your heart closes down, that you see as ugly, as not nice, like sitting in traffic, like feeling unwell. In that moment of experience, the experience itself isn't inherently unpleasant. You can also see the pleasant in the unpleasant. So even talking to this guy, he starts wagging his finger in my face, explaining to me about what programs I should use. I can see the pleasant in that. I can see the compassionate response in that. I can see a person who is suffering, or a person who just has a lot of thoughts. I can see my unpleasant reaction to that. If then you can see the pleasant in the unpleasant, or the pleasant in the unpleasant, you start to take control of your own being. You are no longer simply navigating the world like an animal. You are, in good Brexit language, taking back control. So I see this a lot with my own shortcomings when I got feeling very sorry for myself a few days ago. I had the fish head curry. I was in a temple up country, and there's only like 4 things to choose from. So I knew it was a bad idea, but I ate this fish head curry and was subsequently ill for 2 days, feeling very sorry for myself. But even then, in the feeling ill, that's an unpleasant feeling, but my reaction to it is layering on more and more unpleasantness. Getting angry at them for not cooking the fish properly, getting angry at me, I should have found some other food. And then I was thinking, I should be practicing even while I'm ill, and I'm a bad Buddhist. So you see the pleasant in the unpleasant in the pleasant. The unpleasant in the pleasant means that thing that you are attracted to, that you really like, you really want, that creates desire for the grasping. You see the unpleasantness in that. The Buddha said very specifically one of these practices. It's called Asupa Gamatana. 2 of them I can tell you from Buddhism. One, he said, you see the unpleasantness in food. Helps to break your attachment to food. You probably think you don't have many attachments to food, but you come and live in a monastery for a month or 2. I promise you, all your attachments come out. For myself too, and it grinds you down after a while, but the Buddha said, see the unpleasantness in food. To break your attachment, to break this cycle of the food controlling you, you now control your interaction with it. That was one. Another one that the Buddha recommended was reflection on dead or decaying bodies. A big part of Vipassana practice that doesn't get mentioned so much in Western circuits. But this was a practice, and if you go into especially forest monasteries around Thailand, you will often see a skeleton hanging up, which people wonder why the skeleton, but that's there as a reflection. These are my bones. This is what I'm going to end up as. How well am I spending my time? Down here, Death Awareness Cafe. That's what this whole cafe is about here. Previously in the cafe, they had coffins, and you would come and lie down in the coffin and then reflect. There's no lid, don't worry. And then reflect on, this is where I'm going to end up. How well am I spending my time? If you practice this perception of the fact that you're going to die, it changes your perceptions, your interactions with the world. Grudges are a lot less important when you remember you're going to die. There's a few times I've thought I was going to die, and I wasn't so annoyed about Boris Johnson letting me down that I that I thought I had been beforehand. So Wallace, this is the thrust of Wallace's talk. He says that knowing that you are the center of the universe, now you take charge, you take responsibility for yourself. You can change your perceptions. You can talk yourself, you can change your stories, you can change your constructs. When you do that, you change the world that you live in, both for yourself and for other people. However, the Buddha goes one step further than this. All of this is manipulating our conceptual universe and our interaction with it. But the Buddha says that you have to step out of Maya, out of the delusionary world altogether. And you do that by letting all the thoughts and concepts stop. You have to practice to learn to be familiar with yourself, in yourself, by yourself, without the thinking. This is quite important because a lot of Vipassana schools and teachers say things like, allow the thoughts to be there. They're not correct when they say that. If you practice putting yourself back into the universe, what you find is this immediate, vivid, responsive feeling of yourself is fundamentally different to all other experiences. Putting your attention onto that and learn to drop the entire universe. Let the thoughts cease and know yourself when the thought has ceased. So a few days ago when I was sick, it's like this, I knew I shouldn't have eaten a fish head curry. That fish head curry is, and then I catch it and I let it cease. And it's gone. If you're brave enough and sharp enough, it's just gone. You're like, that thing that was so real a split second ago is just completely emptied out. This is how you create a self. When we talk about no self in Buddhism or letting go of the self, it's that created self that we're talking about. It's not that you yourself don't exist. It's this conceptual you that you train yourself to see past. Another example, I was taking the underground, and I was feeling very sorry for myself. I was actually taking, because I got back to Bangkok yesterday, and I was taking the underground at night. And monks shouldn't really be walking around at night. I know you may sometimes see them, but they're not the good examples to follow. But if you got to, you got to. And getting back to Morchit at 7:30 p.m., I wasn't going to start taking buses, so I took the underground. I felt very uncomfortable. A lot of people dressed up, ready to go out at night. There was a bunch of girls got on and they were in this cosplay, right? You all know that. I felt very uncomfortable. I don't know where to look. Start feeling very sorry for myself. I bet Ajahn Sumedho doesn't have to take the underground at night. Start feeling very sorry for myself, like I'm very uncomfortable, I don't want to be doing this. Is that person taking a photo? Well, is this going to go in Bangkok Post tomorrow? Is it? I'm like, because I'm uncomfortable, I can notice that I feel uncomfortable and then just drop it. That entire self that I'm building at that moment is gone. I've come back to this vivid, direct experiencing. The conceptual world that I'm building is just completely gone. When that goes, what you're left with is, in story, 5 senses, in Buddhism 6 senses, but just that immediate interplay of the senses. There are sounds coming in, there are feelings in the body, my attention is still moving around a bit, but it's not hooking onto anything, and it's not creating any world, it's not creating any self. That dropping of the self, that's our practice. This is stepping out of Maya altogether, out of delusion. The Buddha said, if you have seen the arising of the world, you cannot say it isn't real. If you have seen the cessation of the world, you cannot say it is real. You catch that? If you've seen the arising of the world, this is how you are creating the world, not how the world arose 4 billion years ago. If you're seeing the arising of the world now, you can't say it isn't real. I see it as I'm standing on the underground last night, feeling very uncomfortable, surrounded by 10 girls in these crazy cosplay outfits, praying that nobody's going to take a picture. That I'm creating that whole world up. And it's not unreal. Those girls are really there. That photo really did get into Bangkok Post. Did I tell you when I got arrested after being in the Bangkok Post? It was a good story. The FBI, it's you lot, the Americans, sent the FBI to come and arrest me for murder. I'll tell you after. So those girls are really there. I'm really worried about the photo. I don't like traveling around at night. It isn't, I mean, this isn't illusionary, right? But I'm creating it, I'm lifting it up, I'm manufacturing it around me as I go. I can't say that world isn't real, that these girls don't exist, because they do, or the train exists, because it does. I've seen the arising of the world, so I can't say it isn't real. But I've seen the cessation of the world, that I can't say it is real. Because when I stop that entire process of creating, when I step out of Maya, I'm just left there. Usually breathing, it's quite calm. Seeing a little bit, my attention moving around a little bit. But that entire story has disappeared. That is the creation of the world and the cessation of the world in Buddhism. By the way, when the Buddha used the word world, he used it interchangeably with the 6 senses, or perceptions through the senses. So if you see the arising of the world, it means you have seen the arising of perceptions through your senses. Cessation of the world, you've seen the cessation of the senses. So that is our practice as a practitioner, as a meditator, is to learn to practice stepping out of Maya and back into this immediate, vivid experience. That's the first step. And it takes a bravery to do that, because the temptation is always to try and fix things in Maya, in conceptual universe, right? So, for example, in Thailand, a lot of people learn Abhidhamma. It's a very complicated system of certain jittas, which are mind states, and what qualities are in each mind state. And you have to learn and memorize this large chart of certain mind states and things. And if you learn all of this Abhidhamma, then you have like a matrix through which you can understand things. But this is all in Maya. This is all conceptual world. And when you talk to people whose practice is all in Maya, in delusion, they're very dogmatic, very opinionated. They're very much like, this is the correct framework of which to understand, because this is how the world is. And you just want to give them a good tickle. Because you have to step out of that at some point. All this stuff, including Tibetan Buddhism, Zen Buddhism, Theravada Buddhism, my school, that school, this teacher, the other teacher, all of it, at some point, you learn, you realize, you're just creating conceptual frameworks. When you step out of it, you're just back here, like, is this it? So that's our practice. I want to finish just by mentioning, I've been watching Rupert Spiro, something. I can't have been watching him very thoroughly, can I? I can't remember his name. But he's an Advaita guy, so he's one of these, we presume, enlightened people. And he's always pointing to this, saying, forget about all your thoughts and your feelings and your practice and your goal and your practices are practicing certain perceptions. I can practice watching my breath, but that's a certain perception that I'm learning to take this perception instead of other perceptions. When you step out of Maya, you're dropping all of the perceptions, and then you've stepped out altogether. You're just in this mindful state. Doesn't seem like anything special. So he's saying over and over again, this is what you have to do. Forget about practices. This is very much Advaita, if you know this, non-duality teaching. They often say this, forget about practices, but do this, which is also a practice. People like Krishnamurti were often doing this. So I had a long argument with a Krishnamurti follower. He said, there aren't any practices, everything you do isn't it. And I said, yeah, there are practices that we can do. You can practice morality and keeping precepts. You can practice loving kindness. You can practice breath control. You can practice insight. And you can practice this stepping out of things. When Krishnamurti is saying the practices are a waste of time, what he's saying is developing certain perceptions like colors or earth element, fire element, or mantras, or breathing at the stomach. All of these are just perceptions that you can learn to practice. But to step out of it altogether is what we should be aiming towards. I just want to finish, I want to make clear that even though this experience then of stepping out of Maya appears as something, what's that word? I think I got this off Curb Your Enthusiasm. That's probably where I heard it first, but the word meh, where did meh come from? I'm not sure. Curb was, I think Larry David is where I first heard it. Is meh. Because it's nothing. You want to use your mind to have beautiful thoughts and ideas. I like designing aeroplanes. I learned a lot about aviation design during COVID. So I like designing aeroplanes. It's fun. Right now I'm supposed to be building this retreat center in Rayong, and I'm designing the huts and the kitchen and planning the menus, and it's kind of fun. And if I step out of that altogether, it's, yeah. But this is the experience, this stepping out altogether. This is the only doorway there is to enlightenment. As you sit, practice this. I'm just going to leave it with you as a practice. As you sit, practice not allowing any world creation to come up into your mind. You sit and know yourself, and that's it. No practices, no breath, no perceptions, no mantras. Just, you can do it right now. Just ask yourself the question right now, do I know I'm alive? There's a feeling of here, right? You can do it right now. That's the thing you hold on to. And it's not anything. That's why it's tricky. As you sit, if you hold yourself in that and you don't allow attention to go to any story, consciousness will start to recollect. Mindfulness actually means recollection, or to recollect together. In Thai, samduam chai, bringing the mind together. Buddha used these words to center, to unify, to hold without perception. The mind starts to accumulate by itself because you're holding it back from going into any stories. As it does so, your attention will come from the level of the eyes. You may feel awareness here. There will be a brightening of consciousness, not lights. Lights are perceptions, but just a brightness or a clarity, because you're holding yourself without letting the mind go to anything. As it does this, it will start to unify. As consciousness unifies, it starts to become very beautiful and very happy. This, the Buddha called first jhana. He said this is the footprints of the Buddha. His analogy was, if you want to find the bull elephant, you look for the largest footprint in the forest and you follow those footprints and you'll come to the bull elephant. He said, when you practice this practice, you are now in the footprints of the Buddha. And this is not beyond your capability. This isn't something that you have to spend 30 years as a monk. It took me 25 years as a monk, but I'm a slow learner. Really. As it unifies, you get the piti of rapture comes through the body. It becomes very, very clear, very, very purified and very precise consciousness. Starts to become happy. And a happiness that arises because the mind is actually naturally happy by itself. It's beautiful, it's clarified, it's perfect without you having to add anything to it. This is different to happiness that comes from senses. If I think of something I like, I become happy. If I think about something I dislike, I become unhappy. If I think about food, Marmite, toast, fish head curry, I become happy, I become unhappy. This is all dependent on the object of perception. When you drop Maya altogether, consciousness purifies. This is the only door to enlightenment, no matter what school that you're in. So I'm going to leave it there. Look up Alan Wallace. Do your homework afterwards. It was a good talk that he gave, and he makes a better case than I do for taking responsibility for the world or the water that you swim in, the world that you are in. However, he knows nothing about practice, and he knows nothing about dropping this Maya delusion.
I think you mean David Wallace.
Huh?
David Wallace?
David Edgar Wallace or something?
He said Alan Wallace.
Oh, not Alan Wallace. No. He's another guy. Yeah. The link is in the description for the event. I don't know why I've got something different now on my computer. Okay, his name, David Foster Wallace. David Foster Wallace. It's a really good talk that he gave. Do you want me to tell you about getting arrested by the FBI? So it's at Aryasom on Sukhumvit Soi 1 in the little hotel many of you know. We used to do our Dhamma events there. And I got there one day and there was a bunch of dodgy looking guys. I mean, they had some big guns strapped to their side and like bulletproof vests and things. And there was an ambulance and a nurse. And I looked at them as I was walking in, but, you know, this is Thailand, you get used to seeing weird things. And I went in, and then the owner of the hotel is a good friend of mine, David. And he says, "Oh boy, you're in trouble." I said, "Why?" He said, "The FBI are here to arrest you." And so he took me up, and there was two of these it's the Thai version. CID is it or something? I don't know. The armed, I guess all Thai police are armed, but these are the guys who do shootouts, you know, bulletproof vests and everything. And they'd come, 5 of these guys, armed, vested up, to arrest me, and a couple of nurses. What are they going to do? Shoot me and then patch me up? And what was that for? So, and weirdly, again, you can't make this stuff up. David, the owner, had said to these policemen, said, I'm not having you in my hotel. You're going to scare my guests. You can wait outside. And they, "Oh, all right." And they went outside. 3 of them. He said, 2 of you can come in and you can wait in the meditation room. So I turn up and they see me and then they say, "Are you this guy?" Some guy in America, some American guy who looked a bit like me. And I said, "No, I'm British." And they said, "Oh, okay, never mind." It's like, "Don't you want my passport or something?" You're like, "No, if you're British." It's like, I'm sure this guy, whoever it is, would lie to try and get out of whatever it is. So anyway, I had a chat with them, and then they all left. But I figured out what it was. The couple of days before, I'd been in the Bangkok Post, and they put my photo in. Because otherwise, they'd pick me up at the temple. Why would they pick me up where I'm going to do a Dharma talk? So they must have seen the event. The face of the guy they were after apparently is hiding out in Thailand, and he looks kind of handsome like me. And so I think the facial recognition system had picked it up, and that they'd come and wait for me to come and do this event with a nurse and guns. Anyway, so I wrote a letter to the Bangkok Post, said, you got me arrested, which they found quite amusing. So that's her name, Achara, I think her name was. She ran the Bangkok Post events page. So she's quite a pleasant lady. I never met her, but anyway, I told her that she got me arrested. She said she's very sorry. Any questions about creating your world? We just have 5 minutes before we finish.
Two questions. One, there seems to be a contradiction on one hand to recognize you're the center of the universe, and at the same time losing self. When I recognize I'm the center of the world, isn't that reinforcing self rather than losing it? And the second question is, so you mean like a matrix?
Start with the second question. This idea or feeling that they had in the Matrix is a feeling of humanity. We do all have this feeling that a sense of unreality that will happen from time to time. Normally you can just navigate the world, but from time to time, don't you get this? Sometimes you just like, wait, what the F is this? Is this like really real? And you can't quite put your finger on it. But this is a very common feeling. This is what they nailed in the Truman Show, in the movie, Jim Carrey movie. the Truman was a character in a reality TV show, but he thinks he's in real life. Actually, all the people around him are staged, and the entire town that he lives in is staged, and they have cameras everywhere. And then at some point he realizes, wait, this isn't real. So this feeling pervades through humanity. You hear it in songs. There's a Supertramp song, even in the quietest moments. You listen to that song, he really captures that feeling like, wait, it's not quite real. There's a deeper, truer experience that I'm trying to get to, but I can't quite reach. So the Matrix tapped into it, lots of literature and things tapped into it. The Outsider, the Albert Camus book, really tapped into this feeling of being an outsider, of somehow that you're looking at the world like through a window. So that outsider feeling is a very common feeling for human beings. If you haven't read it, Outsider is actually all about mindfulness. He was learning, Albert Camus was learning Buddhism at the time. So Meursault, the character in the book, is perfectly mindful. He's not able to think of anything in the past or the future. He's just focused on what is happening right now. Like, I feel hot, I feel bored, I feel sleepy. If you read the book with that in mind, it starts to make sense. What's the other question? First question, first point you made?
Me at the center of the universe.
So me as the center of the universe, please distinguish between different selves and what you mean by self. The created self, you might say ego, but as a psychologist I object to the way you all use the word ego. But you might say that, or the agent, the sense of agency, your history, your thoughts, your intentions, your being, all of that can drop. So let's call that the so-called self. That drops all the time, but you're just not aware, you're not used, say you, one, is not accustomed to being aware of oneself independent of that agent controlling things, that ego. So we get used to that practice of dropping all those thoughts, exiting Maya. Then the self that you start to feel is just like a pure life force. It's not young or old. It's not smart. It's not dumb. It's your original face that you had before you were born. Because you come in from the level of the eyes. You come in here. Sometimes you see your hands moving or your feet moving. I had this, when I first started practicing, I had this experience in the car. I was driving back from work. I have a split shift. I have 4 hours. I was driving through town. And I'd been starting to learn to meditate, and then suddenly my entire conceptual self vanished. And I saw my hands indicate, steer. I saw my foot moving pedals. I saw my eyes looking, checking in the mirror. I wasn't doing any of it. It was like an automated robot just doing it. I was like, Jesus. Like, I hope I don't crash. So that self then where you come to, this is the right thing. In meditation, there is a point where all sense of self disappears, where you kind of, that's not the right thing. That's the false samadhi. This sense of intensified self, intensified presence, with a brightness and a clarity and a vividness that increasingly energized. Power arises. You can't do anything with the power. I've tried moving objects and healing people and things like that, but I haven't found a way to use the power. But there's no other word for it, that there's an effervescent power that starts to pulsate and frighten. It can be frightening. I've been watching Louise Kay, if anybody knows Louise Kay. She's one of these Advaita, that she has a really nice accent. and a very nice face. It helps. And she talks about it like, of course, she's enlightened. She's way further along the path, but she talks about it like if you have a bottle of Coke or something, and you undo the lid a little bit, and it starts to fizz. So you screw the lid on, and then you screw it off a bit, and you keep doing this until you can get the lid off. So the same way that power starts to fizz and buzz, and it's frightening, so you clamp it down. But more that it happens, the more you have to keep going back to it, because the more the unreality of the world will grip you, and the more the perfection of purified consciousness will beckon to you. So, yeah, that power, don't be afraid of it, but sometimes you have to just give yourself time to come in. I've tried zapping people with my thing. And then I call them up, did you feel anything? Like, yeah, I had a headache. I did. A close friend of mine has liver cancer. She's had it for about 6 years now. Refused chemo, but she's doing well. She's looking very fit and healthy. Probably the best she's looked in decades, actually. But so I'm very happy for her. But I was sending her this thing, and then I got on WhatsApp. You feel anything? So yeah, I had a headache. Well, there you go. Yeah. I did. I met Mother Teresa one time. Went to her monastery in Calcutta, or Kolkata, as I think it is now. And she put her hand on my head, and I was waiting for the boom, waiting for the zap, the bingo, something. Nah. Meh. I didn't get anything. And to be fair, she didn't put her hand on my head. Someone grabbed her arm, and then they put her hand on my head. So that may be what tainted the experience. I don't know, but I was waiting for the zap. But there is an extraordinary power there, and enlightened people talk about this from time to time. But you have to wait another lifetime, then I'll tell you. Okay, are we all good? I'll still be here for a quick question. Yeah. I'll still be here for a while afterwards if anybody wants to chat.
Sorry about this, quick question. Do you know about the particle observation theory?
Yeah, the wavical thing.
Yeah, the wave, and if you look at it, it becomes a definite state.
Right.
How would you explain that? Just briefly.
Yeah, I'd say go look up Richard Feynman. He explains it better than I do. What he's saying is the slit experiment. If you fire light photons through a screen, if nobody's watching it, it makes a wave pattern, and if somebody's observing it, it makes a particle pattern. It's a very weird thing in quantum mechanics. That light seems to change its behavior on whether somebody's observing it or not. And I'm not sure anybody's ever really explained that.
How could you observe it if you don't observe it?
Because you can record it. They record the pattern of photons hitting the wall at the back. So if you come along afterwards and see it, you see where the photons landed, you see it worked as a wave. But if somebody was watching it while it was happening, then it comes as a... Look up the slit experiment. It's a... what's it called? The split... The two-slit, double-slit experiment.
I think that a particle can have two different exact states at exactly the same moment, so it's just a whole dimensional sort of...
Well, that's Schrödinger's cat, right?
Almost. Yeah, I don't understand it.
Yeah, I know. I don't understand it. But I do love Richard Feynman books. He's just a wonderful storyteller. Yeah. Okay. Let me give the blessing. Oh, you want to finish off? Sabitiyo vivajantu sabharogoina satumate bhavatvantarayo sukhi dikayuko bhava abhivadanasi lisani changvuta pachayino Chattaro dhamma vadanti ayuvano sukhang balang. So look up David Wallace. The link is on the announcement for the David Foster Wallace talk about water. Link is on the announcement. Look up Louise Kay if you want to see a bit of enlightenment.
Thank you, Pandit, for the talk. We will see you next week for another talk with Pandit. So outside there was this notation box for the speaker for healthcare and travel expense. Feel free to donate if you like. And also we have free distribution of English Dhamma books for Prabhaha Kirati, our new speaker next month. His generosity, he gives free